Hello everyone, back to our latest Star Wars video. So we're going to talk about the performance of The Rise of Skywalker. It's been on general release for just over a month now. So its sort of run will be coming to an end quite shortly, actually. You know, that seems amazing that a film can be coming to the end of its run after only being on general release for a month, but that's the nature of the cinema industry these days. Years and years ago, films used to run for several months and gradually build up their revenue. But these days, modern days, the run is pretty much over after a month to 6 weeks. Very quickly starts to wind down and disappear from theatres. And so these films make most of their money in the first weekend. Actually, the big blockbuster films, a lot of the money is made in the first weekend, certainly in the first couple of weeks, and by the time you get through to a month, you can pretty much say where you're going to finish up with these big blockbuster films. So we're going to talk about, first of all, the situation at Rotten Tomatoes with Rise of Skywalker in terms of its reviews, and then have a look and see how the box office has been performing for this film. It continues to be quite disappointing overall, I think. So talk about that very shortly. Just say that if you're enjoying the Star Wars content on the channel, then please like, share, subscribe, let us know in the comments what you're thinking. So we're starting off at RottenTomatoes.com. This is an aggregate page for all of the reviews for the Rise of Skywalker. So we can see that the tomato meter is standing at 52% positive, which is actually rotten in terms of the tomato meter. It means that it's had more negative reviews than positive reviews, and quite significantly so. Actually, 52% is a very, very poor score, particularly in comparison with previous Disney Star Wars films. Both Last Jedi and Force Awakens were in the 90s%. They were very, very critically well received, although I didn't like those two films at all. But critically, they were very successful. This one has really tanked with critics. So it started off around this, actually, in the low 50s. And I said we would probably finish that. I did a video when the reviews for Rise of Skywalker first started appearing, and I said we would probably finish up in the low 50s. Then we went, just for Christmas, it went up quite a bit to around 57, 58%. But I don't know where these reviews are coming from all this late on into its run, but very gradually, day by day, this has been sort of falling away, and so we've finished up pretty much, or we're going to finish up pretty much where we started at 52%. So critically, this is easily the worst reviewed Star Wars film on its initial release. More about that in a moment. But we've also got the audience score on 86%. So the audiences have responded to this film much better than the critics, which is a total flip on what happened with The Last Jedi, where the critics absolutely loved The Last Jedi and the audiences pretty much hated The Last Jedi, I think it's fair to say. So Disney has got this one right, perhaps with its audience, or with much of its audience. The people who have actually gone to see this film have seemingly enjoyed it. The critics didn't. The problem is that not as many people, although people who have gone to see this film have enjoyed it when they've gone to see it on average, not as many people have gone to see this film compared to Disney's previous installments in terms of episodic Star Wars anyway. That's, of course, Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Now, as I say, this film is, the Rise of Skywalker is the most negatively reviewed Star Wars film on its initial release. In fact, it's the most negative reviewed film overall. The previous one that had the worst reviews was, of course, The Phantom Menace. Poor old Jar Jar Binks didn't go down very well with the critics. So the Phantom Menace at Rotten Tomatoes currently sits at 53% with its tomato meter, so it is rotten. That happened, though, really when the 3D release came out for the Phantom Menace a few years ago in 2012, I think it was. Before that, the Phantom Menace on its initial release in 1999 actually was sort of low 60s, so it wasn't particularly popular at all with critics, but it was just about fresh. And then there was a 3D release for Phantom Menace in 2012, which is kind of like the peak of the backlash to the prequels. We had all of that stuff appearing on YouTube, the negativity about prequels on YouTube in that sort of era from around 2008 to 2012, and it's very shortly after that George Lucas sold the franchise then to Disney. So this was kind of like peak negativity for the prequels, and when the 3D release of Phantom Menace was released, and so that took the tomato meter down to 53%. So the Phantom Menace is now rotten at Rotten Tomatoes, but not as rotten as The Rise of Skywalker on 52%. That's just a little bit more rotten in terms of the critical review, and it didn't happen on its original release. So I'm sure this is something that they haven't enjoyed particularly at Disney, because we know what Disney thinks to the prequels and to George Lucas's work. Disney is very, very dismissive and arrogant about the prequel films, so I'm sure it must grate very, very greatly with like J.J. Abrams, Kathleen Kennedy, who we know the arrogance of these people about the prequels and the way they look down on what George Lucas did with the prequels. It must really, really grate on them that this film, the Rise of Skywalker, has actually proven to be more negative with the critics on its original release than even The Phantom Menace was. So I can't imagine what the conversations have been like at Disney about that. Phantom Menace audience score was also quite negative at 59%. Again, a lot of that happened around the 3D release in 2012. But critically, The Rise of Skywalker is the most critically negative reviewed Star Wars film that there has been in terms of episodic Star Wars anyway, episodes 1 through to 9. Now, how's it been performing at the box office? Well, this is its current box office standing. We're at boxofficemojo.com for this. So it's made $1 billion, and I mean, it seems a bit ridiculous to say that a film that's made $1 billion is a bit disappointing, but I think the performance overall, box office-wise, has been a bit disappointing, even though, I mean, it just seems absolutely astounding to say that can be the case when a movie has made $1 billion. But you have to factor in the money that they've spent to make this film and then to promote it and to market it. So it takes a huge amount of money to sort of create a movie like The Rise of Skywalker. And in fact, we don't know how much this film has cost to make. There's been lots of rumours that along the production process has been the case with most of Disney's Star Wars films and with the films that Kathleen Kennedy has produced, that as the film was made, there was various crises and things going wrong along the way, and then in the last sort of 2 or 3 months, there was a total, or last 6 months maybe, there was quite a significant reshoot, and the film turned out to be very significantly different to how it was originally envisaged. And of course, all of that costs extra money as well. It's almost like going back and remaking another version of the film that you've already made, if you see what I mean. So very, very quickly costs can escalate. Of course, Disney don't really make public how much their films have cost to make in a transparent way. It has made its money. It's not lost money. So I think we put that on the table, that it's made its money back, and it's probably going to make a little bit of a profit as well. But I would have thought that the final sort of episodic Star Wars film, the end of the Skywalker saga, I would think Disney would have been expecting to make around $1.5 billion with this. So I think to just about claw their way over $1 billion after a month, they would be quite disappointed with that performance, really. Domestically in the US, it's made $494 million, and internationally, it's made $534 million. So the two combined, domestic and international, is what gets it just about over the $1 billion mark. But that's down, very, very substantially down on The Force Awakens. Of course, there was no way that this film The Rise of Skywalker was going to do as good a box office as The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens was an absolute juggernaut of a film. It reached $2 billion worldwide. It made $1 billion on its international market, and it made just under $1 billion in the US. It was a phenomenon of a film, although I think it was a terrible, terrible film overall. I really didn't like The Force Awakens at all, because it was so derivative and so boring and banal, and just a remake of George Lucas's original Star Wars film. There's no originality to it at all, I didn't think. But nevertheless, the box office suggests that the audience absolutely loved The Force Awakens, and it got Disney Star Wars off to a very, very high mark, and then gradually things have gone wrong ever since. So there's no way it's ever going to do the business that The Force Awakens did, but it might have been expected, I think, to do a little bit better than The Last Jedi. So The Last Jedi came out with a worldwide box office of $1.3 billion. And domestically, it was at $620 million. Internationally, it was at $712 million. I mean, these are phenomenal numbers, and it does seem a little bit crazy to be talking in terms of a disappointing box office performance. But The Last Jedi was quite a disappointing box office performance in comparison to The Force Awakens. It started extremely well in its first week. I mean, it had a catastrophic drop-off in its second weekend, which I think was the audience initially went to see The Last Jedi, saw what a horrible film it was in terms of what it did to Luke Skywalker, and it's just very, very much of a downer of a film. It was a horrible film, really, in a lot of ways, and so it didn't bring people back, because the way these films make their money is by people going back time and time again to see it repeatedly. The Last Jedi had a very big opening. People saw what a horrible film it was, and they didn't want to see it again. And so that's why it had that terrible second weekend drop-off. Nevertheless, it did make $1.3 billion, and that is, I don't think the Rise of Skywalker is going to be able to do that. It's just over $1 billion, but I don't think it's got like another 300 million in its run, to be honest. So I wouldn't see it going up greatly from this. It might get to 1.1 billion, but I don't think it will get to 1.3, and that would be quite disappointing, I think, to Disney. It will raise alarm bells, because the normal way that Star Wars has worked in terms of the episodic Star Wars is that the middle film of the trilogy tends to do the worst business, the first film of the trilogy tends to do the best business, and then the last film of the trilogy will come out somewhere in between. So in terms of the original trilogy, A New Hope, Star Wars, the original Star Wars 1977, that did the best, of course, in terms of box office returns. The Empire Strikes Back actually did the worst in terms of the box office, and then Return of the Jedi was somewhere between the two. It's the same pattern for the prequels. The Phantom Menace did the best business, although it was very unpopular, seemingly, with a lot of people who saw it, but the Phantom Menace did do the best business. Attack of the Clones did the lowest box office return, and then Revenge of the Sith, again, was somewhere in the middle. So I think Disney will be quite concerned, and out of everything that's gone on with The Rise of Skywalker, I think this will be the most concerning aspect, that the pattern that we tend to see with Star Wars, in terms of the episode Star Wars, has been broken with The Rise of Skywalker. And that would suggest, I think, that The Last Jedi has done a huge amount of damage to the brand overall. And, you know, just that people, I mean, the people who have seen The Rise of Skywalker have enjoyed it, obviously. But you see that from the score at Rotten Tomatoes, but not as many people wanted to go and see it, and it looks like not as many people have seen it repeatedly either, so a lot of people have stayed away after what happened with The Last Jedi, which was such a downer of the film. It really is hard to believe that Disney decided to make or let Rian Johnson make The Last Jedi in the way that he did, and a lot of people therefore, it seems, have stayed away from The Rise of Skywalker altogether, just haven't bothered to go and see it. And I think to get this relatively low overall return, it would suggest that the people that have turned out have only, a lot of them have only turned out once and have not wanted to go back, which seems to be odd given that it would appear to be quite a popular film with its audience. But there we go, the figures don't lie. That is how the film has performed, and it's going to come in lower than The Last Jedi, which in itself was a very big downwards plunge from The Force Awakens and had that terrible drop-off of the second weekend. We haven't seen that kind of terrible drop-off with The Rise of Skywalker. It's been fairly consistent in its performance. It's just been consistently under The Last Jedi. So all in all, quite a disappointing run in terms of its box office. I mean, it's made money, so it's not a solo Star Wars story, which lost money primarily due to the fact that the film was remade after around 80% of it was shot. So it's like 2 films that had to be paid for, so it was always going to struggle to make money really solo. But that movie did lose money for Disney. This one has made its box office back, so they are in profit just, I think, with this. Although, as I say, we don't know how much they've spent to create it, to make it and to market it. But I think $1 billion will get them into profit, however much they've spent. But it is quite a disappointing run, and critically very disappointing performance. The critics did not like this film, and it is the most negatively viewed Star Wars film critically and on its initial release as well, because although The Phantom Menace, I'll explain what happened with that, but it became more unpopular critically on the 3D release in 2012. So I think Disney will be quite disappointed, and I think there will be alarm bells going off about how the performance of Star Wars appears to be declining. Of course, the movies are not the only story with Star Wars. There's also the tie-ins, so there's the toy sales are very poor generally. The toy sales of Star Wars have been declining year on year pretty much since Disney has taken over. There's all the other merchandise that goes along with it that appears to be in a bit of a decline as well. So just what future Star Wars has for Disney over the next sort of 5, 10, 15 years, I think they will be quite alarmed at how this has gone since they had that very, very high point with The Force Awakens. It seems like it's been downhill, not catastrophically quickly, but quite substantially downhill trend, really, with Star Wars since they took over from George Lucas in 2012. So I think there will be changes coming. I assume Kathleen Kennedy will be on her way from Lucasfilm within the next few months, I would have thought. And we know that they are going to pause the films for a while. Not going to be any cinematic release. They're going to focus on the television stuff like The Mandalorian that's being streamed on Disney+. And so there will be changes coming, but whether they can ever get back to that really high point that they had with The Force Awakens remains to be seen. Right, if you enjoyed the video, then please like, share and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you thought of Rise of Skywalker and what you think to its performance overall. And we'll be back with more Star Wars content very, very soon. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching.